Come on, Bear, burn rubber.
Yes, sir.
We're here to heckle a Muppet movie.
Gentlemen, that's straight ahead. Private screening room D.
Private screening?
Yeah, they're afraid to show it in public.
Oh! Oh, look at this place. What a dump.
Bunch of weirdos around here. Look at them.
What about their husbands?
Ticklish. I mean, let's face it, if they took care of business, I'd be out of business. You know what I mean?
Those idiots.
The bridge is out! What? The bridge is out!
Hey everyone, welcome back to No Inhibitions, the double feature podcast where we pair the unpairable and link the unlinkable. Two unlikely movies are picked at complete random, and at the end of every back-to-back discussion, no matter how hard it may be, my guest and myself will find the connecting thematic tissue, whether it be from genre, aesthetic, motive, or style. As always, I'm your host, Jack Siddle, and last time you guys would have heard from me, it's when I would have paired my good buddy, Andrew Buckley on, head and sort of creator there of the Coffee with Keats Instagram page, and very much in fashion of the guest of the topic of discussion, we paired the sort of romantic ode odyssey of Bright Star, covering sort of the life of the poet John Keats, and of course we did that one with the animated Lord of the Rings movie, which was sort of a speed run through the three books, but also sort of having enough in there of its own sort of singularity, characteristics, and animation style, where it sort of stood upon its own from sort of more the well-known, more Peter Jackson blockbusters. But, as always, with a new episode, I'm bringing on a new guest with a new double feature. You can find this lovely gentleman on Letterboxd and Twitter. I've known this gentleman for quite a long time. He's been meaning to have him on for forever. He used to be my previous editor over on the Buff Film Buffs website. A fantastic writer, and he's just finished the rounds, the festival rounds of his sort of latest comedy, Dueling Season, of course, which was written, directed by Chance Freytag. Chance, how we going, man?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the time to talk about movies. It's the thing I do most. So
Of course, man. No, and like we've spoken about this off air time and time again on I've been cooking up this little double feature for you, and it's going to be very interesting. Sort of maybe in the later half of the discussion on how we'll go on sort of your opinions on one of the movies that we've picked, but no, yeah, but what's been happening?
Yeah, always out working. I'm in film school at FSU right now, so I'm working on a lot of movies. I think what's interesting is what got in the way of this recording a couple times was the first time I was shooting a project of my own over the summer, and then we were gonna do it again, I think in the fall, and I was the electrician on a feature film at that time, and so I was just dead to the world for a month. So here we are. It's the week of Thanksgiving here in America, and
Hey,
we're finally doing it. So
here to talk some movies on Thanksgiving. How good?
Exactly.
That's good. No, but like as I mentioned just before, like in terms of cooking up a appropriate double feature for this fine gentleman here with me, Chance, what two movies are we talking about today?
Oh man, we're talking about the seminal classic, the masterpiece of filmmaking, the Muppet movie, and James Cameron's post-divorce classic, True Lies.
Oh man, it was such a light bulb moment for me when those two movies came across my desk, and I'm like, Chance, like you instantly came into my head instantly. Mainly,
I have to know why.
Well,
because it's like when I was your editor, I was like the sleaze guy. Like I did articles on like random crap.
No, Chance has always just been like one of my favorite people on Letterboxd, because you're always just making me add the most obscure shit to my watch list. I'm like, okay, wake up every morning, check Letterboxd. Okay, what's Chance watch? All right, I've never fucking heard of that. Let's add that to the watch list. So like, you've always been that guy to me. But in terms of you just asked me why you for this double feature, because I've known you for a couple of years now, and you've always been the Muppet guy to me.
That's good. My location on Letterboxd has been Muppet Studios since I was like 17 years old. That hasn't. That's like the one thing about my account that's never changed. So
Yeah.
I'm glad here. If you can see on Zoom, for the people listening, they can't see what I'm currently holding a
Look at that. That's
25-year
phenomenal.
anniversary Muppet Studio Kermit the Frog figure. So
That's
I
gorgeous.
keep that thing on me at all times.
That's amazing. Just in case, you never know when you'll need it.
Exactly.
But yeah, like I've just always associated every time the Muppets have came across me, or I've thought about like a Muppets moment. I'm like, yeah, one day if I ever get the chance to talk about the Muppets, one day I know the man who to call.
Hey, I appreciate it. I've got so many Muppet opinions. Like, I could do like a whole 2-hour podcast just on Muppets Haunted Mansion with no prep, just like off the dome. I haven't watched it since it came out in 2021, and I could turn around and do that. But I rewatched the Muppet movie, which I've seen God knows how many times for this podcast. So
Amazing.
I'm
Don't worry.
prepared.
Oh, don't worry. When we get into the Muppet related discussion, I've got to sort of dissect your Muppet history. I'm very intrigued to hear your opinions on various Muppet media.
I have them, man. I have them.
Good stuff. But with that, I mean, no time to waste. Should we just get straight into it?
Let's do it.
Let's talk about the Muppet movie.
Here we go.
Jim Henson Home Entertainment presents
Muppet Movie, Scene 1A, Take 1.
It's the masterpiece that started it all.
Someday we'll find it, the Rainbow Connection.
Come along with those lovable Muppets
My name is Kermit the Frog, and I'm on my way to Hollywood. Moving right along.
as they head off to Tinseltown,
I want you to turn left if you come to a fork in the road.
featuring an all-star, all-rockin' cast. Kermit the Frog,
I hope you appreciate that I'm doing all my own stunts.
Waka waka waka.
Fozzie Bear,
We'll be at tea.
the Great Gonzo,
Whoopee!
and everybody's favorite ham, Miss Piggy.
I am an actress model.
Can you picture that?
I hear this movie is dynamite.
Jim Henson's The Muppet Movie.
Let's have a look. So the Muppet movie is the 1979 musical road comedy film that has a cast of Jim Henson, Frank Oz, Jerry Nelson, Richard Hunt, and Dave Goelz. And, of course, we will get to it, but also has an extended cast of people like Elliot Gould, Dom DeLuise, James Coburn, Bob Hope, Richard Pryor, Steve Martin, Mel Brooks, Orson Welles even at one point, which, I think this movie has sort of a reputation for that like one-line cameo, which is amazing. But yeah, man, like I said, the Muppet movie. So this is like 100% Chance terrain. So Chance, I want to get, before we actually sort of start discussing the movie as a whole, I want to get your sort of history with maybe not so much just particular the Muppet movie, but just the Muppets in general.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I think I can't tell the history of that I have with the Muppet movie without talking about the Muppets, because I actually didn't ever see the original 79 Muppet movie until like 2020. When I was already out of high school and everything. I was an undergrad at the time, and it is interesting because I watched the Muppet Show all the time as a kid. We had VHS tapes of the entire original series. I saw Muppets 2011 and Muppets Most Wanted in theaters, and I was just, like an avid fan. I'm from Florida, so like I grew up going like Muppet Vision 3D and stuff all the time, and they had lots of like live Muppet stuff in the Disney parks when I was really, really young. And so they've just sort of always been a part of my life. And I can't remember what sort of hit me. Like one day I realized that I'd actually never seen the entirety of like the Muppet movie in 1979. And I sat down to watch it in 2020, and it took me away. Like it was everything I wanted from the Muppets. It was walking that perfect tightrope of sort of formal complexity and simplicity, snarky, sarcastic, rude, and sincere, like all at once. It's just doing everything pitch perfect, beginning to end. And by that time, right, I was full on cinephile, et cetera, et cetera. Unlike I had been when I was younger, I'd watch the Muppet Show and I wouldn't know who half the guests were because I mean they were celebrities in the 70s, and like I was born in the 21st century, so I was missing out on some of that knowledge. But like
Yeah.
watching it as an 18-year-old, it was like, oh, I know Elliot Gould, I know Dom DeLuise, I know James Coburn. Every single time
Right.
somebody showed up, I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. Like
Yeah.
Elliot Gould is one of my favorite performers of all time. So when they pull up to the county fair and he's judging the beauty contest, I was just doing backflips in my room.
Absolute jump
Uh,
scare.
it's not a jump scare. It's the opposite of a jump scare. What do
Well,
you
yeah.
call it when it's just like a beautiful
It's
surprise? It's like
unexpected. Beautiful,
it's
unexpected moment.
so wonderful, and it was just everything I wanted out of a movie at the time. And I think I mean it still is. I think when I was talking to you, I compared it to taking a nice warm bath, just coming home, dropping some Epsom salt in there, a bath bomb, and just soaking yourself. And when I reviewed it on Letterboxd, when I rewatched it for this podcast, I said it was like holding hands with God.
Yes,
And I think
yes.
that these are both true. It's
Well,
like you
you're so on the
reach out
point.
and touch it, and it's like God creating Adam. It's like this is what movies were meant to do. It's the love of showmanship there, the spectacle, the beauty. It's perfect. It's a perfect movie.
Well, no, you've hit the nail on the head right from the beginning there, my friend. So, like, literally, like, to jump straight off the bat, in terms of Muppet media and on how they deal with, because I completely forgot. It has been a little while since I've watched this. I mean, I did rewatch the movie rather in preparation for this podcast. I completely forgot it's an origin story.
It is. It's
Um,
more importantly than that, it's a fictionalized origin story.
right.
Like it's a movie that the Muppets have made within the world of the
Yes,
Muppets.
yes,
It's a fictionalized account of their own formation that you watch them watching a preview screening
I
of.
don't even know how I haven't even thought of that. That's so it's so obvious, but it's just so like witty too. It's such an interesting
Mhm.
idea where it's not sort of like, I guess, quote unquote, like documentary of like, oh, Jim Henson, this is how I got like the Muppets together and blah 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 and all the rest of it.
Yeah,
It's like no, these are like established, real, tangible like people in this world, and yeah, this is how
right.
they came together. It's really, really that's actually a really funny point. Yeah.
It's the whole appeal of the Muppets, and it's one of those things that people were sort of that they consider the 2015 Muppet TV show sort of controversial for is that show is pretty much entirely like Muppets behind the scenes drama, right? And the original Muppet Show is back and forth. You go backstage and you watch the stuff they're putting on for the variety show. And the movies that they have for the after 2011, so like the James Bobbin ones, the Muppets Most Wanted and just the Muppets with Jason Segel and Amy Adams, are also like not about the show. They're about the behind the scenes stuff the Muppets are doing. And
Right.
like for years, including this movie, including like Great Muppet Caper and stuff, the movies were things that the actual performers the Muppets were making starring themselves.
Right.
And I think that's what's really amazing about the Muppet movie is part of the appeal of the Muppets is that it's not like a traditional like hyper sincere origin story, right? It's not like here's the characters you love and here's where they came from. It's like the Muppets are gonna do the thing they always do, which is they're gonna do all the show business drama. They're gonna
Yeah.
do all the winking and nodding, and they're gonna make the other thing. So it's like half sincere, half parody. Because like sometimes it's like it's a goofy fake origin story,
Right.
and other times they're actually trying to like to pull the tears out of your
Yeah.
ducts because like they know they can.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, and it completely, through and through rides that line extremely well. I mean, you get, like you said, it's almost like a gag per minute, like comedy special. Like it reminded me
yeah.
on this rewatch, it just pretty much reminded me of like a stand-up routine of like a comedian. Just like beat, 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 like just joke, 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 joke. And it's so witty. And it's like, it's actually kind of a really hard movie to do a podcast for in terms of note taking because I had to pause the movie about 20,000 times to catch up with all the jokes that were happening. I was like, oh, fuck, that's a brilliant joke. I got to write that down. And it's just like, it's so witty. And it's like, it is so well technically made, which I do want to get into because apparently this movie was like
Yeah.
kind of a nightmare to make too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like, this is obviously the first time Jim Henson had sort of wanted to push the idea of let's get the Muppets in the real world and sort of interact with real, tangible, environments that people like you and I interact with like every other day. And obviously, an idea is sort of simple and just, we wouldn't give it any second thought. That sort of concept alone just caused an absolute headache.
I mean, it's mayhem. It's like Kermit on a bicycle was the thing that a
Yeah.
lot of people remembered coming out of this movie when it came out in theaters, and like to this day is one of the most, indelible images of like Muppet canon, which is you see his whole body and he's moving and you don't see the strings.
Oh man.
It's just for 1979 and just period, like that's such a feat. And obviously later, I think in Great Muppet Caper, they have like a sequence where they have like a dozen Muppets on bicycles at once.
Wow.
Because they're just showing off that they figured it out by then. But for this movie, you have so many things. You have the giant animal head. You have multiple shots of like Muppets full body, head to toe. You can't hide a puppeteer, so
Right.
you just have to find a way to do the action you need them to do in that shot.
Yeah.
Something my partner and I were laughing about when I was finishing it last night was the sort of standoff between Kermit and Doc Hopper at the end.
Yeah.
It cuts to behind Kermit and it's sort of doing the Western standoff shots.
Yeah.
And Kermit is completely still, and you can tell that he's not moving at all. They just have like a wireframe Kermit the Frog standing there in the foreground, and it's
Oh my God.
it's like, what are you gonna do? Like, how are you gonna hide somebody there? And you're not doing computer graphics. You're not painting over wires. Like, he's just gotta be there. Like, you've just got to drop a guy there and hope the audience isn't paying attention to the fact there is no movement.
Oh, you can so tell that like 80% of the movie, people in production would just go, please just fucking stand there. Please don't fall over.
It's
would have been so scary.
True. And like you always feel like you when they're moving, there's like a puppeteer that's like an inch out of frame. Like some of those shots early on in the movie theater when they're all like talking and yelling and stuff, all the Muppets that are in seats, there's puppeteers under the seats, and that's fine. You're never gonna see them.
Yeah.
But like there are like Muppets walking down the stairs and moving in the aisles,
man.
like, and it's like that there is somebody like right out of frame, and it's like that shot was like painstakingly composed to get a shot that if it was just a scene with actors would take 10 seconds to turn around and shoot.
Yeah.
It must have taken hours to like figure out that exact composition and like the camera movement, because Henson is constantly moving the camera in this movie, which is just so fucking difficult when you're having to hide so many people like on the borders of your image. Like he does a lot. He does a really, really, really smart thing where he'll do a lot of crane in shots whenever they introduce a new location. And it's these really elaborate crane movements where it'll like start on a close up and then it'll go up and wide and it'll go back down. And he'll have the Muppet character then walking into frame the moment like that front part of the shot finishes, so that they're not having to hide puppeteers in the wide. And the moment it comes down to that like that medium coverage at the end of the crane shot, they'll like pop up. And it's just, there's so much of that in this movie where they're just hiding all the strings.
Well, yeah, and you're totally right. It could have been so easy on their part rather, and I don't know if like sort of a lot of people would have given it even much notice if they did that, but they could have just easily had just like flat shot here, Muppet talking, flat shot, flat. But like you said, the camera is so fluid, and it looks like it sounds silly to say, but it does look like just a regular movie with real actors, but the added technical sort of impressiveness of it, oh god, we're not only shooting an actor, we've got to get a real person, make sure he's not in frame, get this Muppet moving that looks authentic, and it's such an impressive sort of technical feat, and it's so funny to talk about that sort of in terms of like, someone just generally may just go, oh, it's just, just a Muppet movie. But no, it is like just genuinely like just an impressive movie. Yeah.
And it's like, it's one of those things, the dedication to not cutting in those moments where you could easily just cut to a shot of Muppets after your big establishing shot.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, we're tying them to the physical space. And Henson is taking the time to do that.
Yeah.
He's adding the extra hour and a half of work every single day they're shooting this thing to like make sure that they're in the same shot as all of the physical stuff that's going on. And it's like, that's some of what's missing from newer Muppet movies, specifically Muppet's Haunted Mansion, which I already talked about, which is pretty much all green screen by that point.
Yeah.
But a lot of the later stuff after Henson is dead and after Brian Henson stops directing, because he makes Christmas Carol and Treasure Island after Jim dies, and those are both wonderful movies, and they do a lot of similar things. But after that, Muppets Wizard of Oz, even Muppets 2011 and Muppets Most Wanted will take the easy way out when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah. No, 100%. And it's also, I'm ashamed to admit it, but I am not too familiar. I do need to catch up with my Muppet movie history. I have been meaning to ask you in this discussion. So, like, obviously the plot of this, I just adore on sort of the simplicity because, get the establishing shot of sort of Kermit, playing the Rainbow Connection, which is just a gorgeous scene, which was also, if we can just throw back to technicality really quick, that took almost like a
to shoot.
fucking like week to film because Henson had to be like in like a tiny barrel underneath in the water with like a little tube to breathe out. Oh my god,
oxygen,
Like even as I was watching this movie for this podcast, I was like, okay, that's just like a really nice Kermit scene, and just completely, as I was doing research for it yesterday, had just completely, I don't know, for whatever reason, just removed sort of the behind the scenes aspect, that part of my brain where I'm like, oh, of course, no, someone has to be under him in the water.
Someone has to be puppeteering him, and it's Jim Henson. Like,
and it's
Henson is Kermit, so he's got to be under there while he's directing the movie.
And I guess that's just sort of like
as Kermit the Frog.
Yeah, it's bizarre because it's also just plays into the fact, I guess, in my brain where it just looks that authentic, where it's going to sound so stupid to say, but I'm like, oh, that's just like Kermit. Like Kermit's like, he moves and looks real, like enough where I'm like, oh no, of course, like someone has to be under, like I'm thinking logically.
Exactly.
Like, it's so insane. But no, I was going to quickly ask because obviously the plot of this, we've touched on briefly before the recording on just how sort of simplistic, but it completely works for it on just the beautiful nature of it, of Kermit, road trip movie, wants to be famous, wants to make people happy, go to Hollywood. It's fantastic. I did want to ask though, if the other Muppet movies down the line, do they get more elaborate or do they sort of remain in that a foot in the simplistic camp?
They're all over the place, really.
Yeah, okay.
As they progress, I mean, obviously Frank Oz directs a lot of the later ones after this, because I think, Henson's next big movie is The Dark Crystal.
Of course, yes.
But after this, you have Muppet Caper, Muppet Treasure Island, Muppets from Space.
I think that's the only one I've seen.
Muppets Manhattan.
Space.
Muppets from Space got a lot of play. For a lot of people when they were younger. I know I saw it before I ever saw this movie. I don't know why. I would be curious to sort of know the rationale as to why some people in their childhood saw Muppets from Space and not the other ones, but it's up and down. The puppeteering gets more complicated as the movies progress. For sure, like I said, like the shot, like the dozen Muppets on bicycles. You have lots of Muppet location shooting for Muppet Treasure Island.
Oh
There's
man,
amazing soundstage work in that movie and in Muppet Christmas Carol. The plots depend. The plots of Treasure Island and Christmas Carol are very distinct because they're adapting books, and like this, those are both staged as the Muppets are acting in an adaptation of Treasure Island, an adaptation of Christmas Carol. Like Gonzo plays Charles Dickens in Christmas Carol and stuff. And it's Gonzo and it's not actually Charles Dickens. He's just portraying that character. But the other ones are interesting from the 80s because except for Great Muppet Caper, they largely play as sort of like variety shows again. Muppets Take Manhattan is just kind of all over the place. Like a bunch of different things are unfolding at once.
Yeah.
And it's just like, let's do this, let's do this, let's do that. Great Muppet Caper is pretty streamlined. And that one I really love as well because it has like a pretty massive supporting role from Charles Grodin, one of the great actors in history. And he gets a full musical number with Kermit and Miss Piggy, and it's just brilliant. It's gold. It's fucking gold.
Oh, and
then the later ones I think fall off a lot, with the exception of Muppets 2011. And Muppets Most Wanted is fine, but Muppets 2011 is really good.
Yeah, I do.
It's so dedicated to reinvigorating like the IP, quote unquote. I'm doing the air quotes right now because I'm like calling it that, but that is the goal of that movie, if we're being real.
Yeah,
and it does a great job. And Muppets 2011 is a great movie, but Muppets Wizard of Oz, even Muppets from Space to an extent, and then Muppets Haunted Mansion, Muppets Now, all of this new stuff.
Right.
It kind of reverts because they're able to do green screen, and so instead of solving problems creatively, they're just like, let's just slap this shit on a green screen or
Right.
put the puppeteer in a morph suit and just make them disappear, and so it just doesn't have the same
It's kind of a
appeal.
shame they just reverted to sort of. It's hard because I don't want to say laziness because obviously it's just an incredibly hard task. But I mean, well, this movie is like the perfect example. It's just that magic of it.
It is. It's the magic, and I think it's the same thing as like when you watch a Jackie Chan movie that's made in Hollywood versus when you watch like a Hong Kong Jackie Chan
Very good
movie.
comparison, yeah.
And you watch the Hong Kong movies not for the plot, not because of like the camera, not because of, any particular element that's like that Hollywood supposedly excels at. You watch it because you wanted to see Jackie do it for real.
Yes,
You want to
yes.
see you want to see him jump off a three-story building. You want to see him like just get his ass kicked and fly through a window.
Yeah.
And when you watch it, you know it's real. You're looking at it and like you can tell, and we as viewers can tell when something isn't real.
Right.
It's you maintain the illusion for the movie, and it's like how fake can it look and still function for the plot. You get to Hollywood and you know it's all fake, and they're doing it like more toned down and they're cutting more. The appeal is sort of gone. And like Jackie's still a great movie star and he's still extremely charismatic, but he's coasting on those qualities rather than the sort of stunt work that defines his Hong Kong stuff. And it's like in the best Jackie Hong Kong movie, you're getting a plot that's as good or better than the Hollywood ones. You're getting images that are designed to focus on the actual appeal of the movie, which is the stunt work and the choreography.
Right.
And then you have all of these set pieces, which are showcasing the thing you're there for, which is all of these guys who are just so physically capable and so absolutely wonderful at performing that you can sit there and watch it forever. And the same is true for the Muppets. You're there for the technical elements.
Yeah.
You want to see a crazy big puppet. You want to see a million puppets on bikes at once. And you want to know that those are puppets. You want to know that somebody is making that happen and they're not just cheating by doing it on a computer, which is a separate art in its own right.
Right.
But that's not puppeteering, right? Like you want to see crazy puppeteering. You want to see some kind of insane like animatronic build or some sort of like a massive puppet rig that has like 3 people in it.
Oh
like,
man.
And you as a viewer watch the movie and go, holy shit, that puppet's insane. Like when you see the giant animal head pop out of the building and
just about to bring that up, yeah.
You're like, oh my god, like that's huge. They built that.
Isn't
like,
that
real.
insane? Isn't that the craziest thing they did that?
It's
like
incredible.
Like people like, no, Jim, like we can like just do a miniature town and just use the normal animal up. No, we're fucking building this massive head and we're gonna make it come out of that build. And I'm like, Jim Henson's a madman. Absolute, like, miss him dearly. Absolute crazy person. That is an unbelievable feat in filmmaking. I could not believe that.
And the same is true of like his other work, like Muppet Vision 3D. Have you ever seen Muppet Vision 3D?
I haven't, no. I don't think I've even heard of that. So what is that?
So this is a bit fortuitous and a little bit sad, because today is the day that Disney officially announced that they're tearing down Muppet Vision 3D in Hollywood Studios in Florida.
What, today?
They announced today that they're replacing the Muppets area of Hollywood Studios, the theme park, with a Monsters Inc. land.
Oh my god, how did we land recording today to do that? That's very fitting.
Divine providence, I guess. It's very sad because Muppet Vision 3D is actually the last Muppet movie Henson ever personally directed. It's right after he sold the Muppets to Disney, which he famously regretted. Like he said that he like sold his soul.
Yeah.
And that the company was gonna kill him. And he died very soon after. But the last thing he ever directed was Muppet Vision 3D, which is a 15-minute movie that's been playing in the parks for over 30 years now.
Yeah.
And it's really amazing, and it's a really bitter movie. You can find like pieces of it on the internet, obviously without all the 3D elements and the live elements in the theater. Because there's like a guy that comes out in a Sweetums costume and like interacts with the screen, like Megalopolis.
Yeah.
There's like a Swedish Chef animatronic and Statler and Waldorf animatronics that are all there interacting with the screen. And it's just this absolutely insane technical achievement because it's like you got live actors, animatronics, a 3D movie. The theater itself is interactive with the movie. There's a scene where a cannon goes off and like bricks start falling out of the wall and everything.
Man.
It's really amazing, but it's also just this deeply like cynical movie about like the disintegration of the Muppets.
Wow.
Like the show falls apart, things are like breaking and burning, and by the end of the show, the theater's been destroyed, and it's just like interesting to think about because Henson was not an artist. He was an artist who was primarily there to entertain. Like he cared about
Yeah,
entertaining people, but it feels like such a personal statement for him in a way that a lot of the other Muppet movies don't. Um,
interesting. Isn't
and
that weird? Isn't
it's
that like fascinating? That
yeah,
was his last thing. It's very sort of
it's very sad. It's very,
yeah.
very sad. But it's a great movie. It's genuinely, if I had to like say my top 10 short films I've ever seen, I would put Muppet Vision
That's
3D in
incredible.
there.
I'm gonna have to track that down now. That's interesting. And I mean, like, just naturally, I'm gonna have to track down other sort of, um, you know what? I'll tell you this. At the end of this recording, Chance, I want you to send me through Muppet media I must consume. So I'm gonna make it
I will. I
until
will.
rest of the year. We've got a month. I'm gonna consume as much Muppet stuff as I can.
Muppets are a great New Year's sort of
Yeah.
atmosphere they have. I'll send you some good Muppet Show episodes too, because I feel like you
Okay.
don't have to watch the whole show. There's 4 seasons of it, but there are some bangers. Are you a Vincent Price fan?
I am, yes. So
His
I'm
episode,
down.
man,
I'm
you're
already
you're gonna
down.
love it.
I'm already down. I mean, like as a kid, naturally, because my parents were at the age growing up where they were a big fan of the show. So like when I was a bit younger, probably about, 6, 7, 8, I would just through maybe secondhand of them watching it, I would sort of consume the show a bit. And I do remember bits and pieces and on sort of like we're talking about very fondly of this movie, just the impressiveness of the technical craft that went into it, and not only that, but like the comedy was also it holds up. Um,
Oh, it's hilarious.
it's really funny. I was sort of taken aback on sort of there's a lot of just great witty one-liners that are just quickly thrown
Mhm.
off and then boom, quick, no time, onto the next joke immediately, and the whole movie just moves like that.
Exactly. And it's a bit trite to say this because when you're talking about like a great comedy, it's sort of the natural thing. But every time I come back to this, there's a new joke I've forgotten.
Yeah, yeah.
This time particularly, I'm thinking about the scene whenever Mel Brooks comes in as the German doctor who's going to torture Kermit and like give him amnesia. And he has the machine, and Kermit's all like locked in the chair, and Miss Piggy's fighting all the henchmen. And Mel Brooks is like, I have to reach the switch. And it's like it cuts to him and he's
Right
slowly
there.
reaching for the switch. It's like 2 inches away and he's
I was cracking up.
slowly reaching for it. And like it's interesting because Henson doesn't even really grab an insert shot of that. It just cuts to the wide and you just see him and his arm is right up against his body and he's just like moving for it slowly, like waiting for Miss Piggy to kick him. It's so good.
It's so funny too. Well, I was getting a massive laugh out of it because, like, the last time I saw this, for the majority, because it was a little while ago, a lot of the cameos just went over my head because I didn't know who these people were. But like on
Yeah.
this rewatch, like every person that was showing up, I was like, "That's incredible! They got that person."
It's amazing. And just about all of those actors, I think the vast majority of them had been previous guests on the Muppet Show.
Yeah, that
They
makes
all
sense.
have episodes dedicated to them. It's like that's, Madeline Kahn and Telly Savalas are in it for one shot. But wow, what a shot that's full of star power.
Right.
Madeline Kahn, Kermit the Frog, Telly Savalas all lined up.
Steve Martin as the as
Oh
like
my
the
God, his
bitter
scene.
waiter. Oh, that's like one of my just flat out one of my favorite scenes in the movie of like Kermit and Piggy's
Sparkling
romantic date.
Muscatel. One of the finest wines of Idaho.
Tyson just immediately spits it out. He's like always just great.
I love Steve Martin, and
He's
he's just
fantastic.
incredible.
Yeah.
He's amazing. The actors that get full scenes like him, like Mel Brooks and everything, just are absolutely wonderful. One of my favorite performances in the movie is one of the consistent supporting characters, which is Austin Pendleton,
Mm-hmm.
who is Doc Hopper's assistant.
Yes.
And Pendleton is just a massively underappreciated performer. He's very funny. He's in Peter Bogdanovich's What's Up, Doc,
Yep.
which if anybody listening to this hasn't seen What's Up, Doc and loves the Muppet movie, watch What's Up, Doc immediately. It's like a screwball comedy, has a very similar sense of humor, and Pendleton is in the back half of that movie and just gives one of the funniest performances I've ever seen. And he's wonderful in this movie as well. He's just such a great presence, and he's really compelling. It's easy to have a sort of toady type character that just sort of is a sympathetic henchman the bad guy has that actually wants to help the heroes or whatever. But the moment you see Pendleton, you're just on his side. He's just such a sweet, sweet seeming
Yes.
man
Yeah.
in this movie. And it's like he's also fucking hysterical. You have the part when he tells Doc Hopper that he's done, he's not gonna hunt the Muppets anymore, and he's like, I'll double your percentage, and he's like, I'll open the door.
Yeah, I'll open
and
the
he
door.
just goes
yeah.
right over.
Everyone's got that price. Yeah.
It's
And
so
like
good.
it's just incredibly just like joyous to like for anyone who hasn't seen the movie, the whole reason like Doc Hopper, I guess you could say, well, he is absolutely he is as villainous as they come. He's just like a pretty much live action cartoon in parts,
He
played
is.
by Charles Durning. But like his whole thing on why he's trying to hunt Kermit in particular is he wants to set up like his own fast food franchise of specifically frog legs.
Yes.
It's so wonderful. That part where we touched on before of sort of Kermit riding the bike, but he also just like rides through the construction of one of these fast food frog
Yes.
legs play and it's something as simple as just like a throwaway gag of like sort of them building that restaurant, and you get the massive sort of, it's like their version of like the Golden Arches, but it's like the giant frog
Yes,
legs.
it's the
Like,
giant frog legs.
that's like just an impressive piece of like sort of tangible, set design. And it's
It
just like
is.
thrown away as like a throwaway gag.
It's so great. And something else about Doc Hopper, my favorite Doc Hopper moment in this movie, because it's just like he is just people often call this movie nice core. It gets lumped in with like the nice core sort of thing, which
Okay.
nice core is a very dubious label, like, right? It's been thrown around like basically since Paddington 2 came out. And it's
okay.
sort of
Yeah.
people apply that label like Paddington 2, a lot of Ghibli movies. Like most famously, it's kind of like the reason Ted Lasso is the way it is.
Okay.
And it's like just like overly like nice and sentimental and like believes in the goodness of humanity and all this shit. And people apply that to the Muppets, and I think that's so odd because the Muppets is like as a franchise, very bitter. A lot of very cruel jokes, like lots of like people like being hurt and dying. Lots of like really like dark satire about stuff, and not in like it's edgy, but like the worldview of the Muppets is optimistic and sweet in some ways, and very counterculture in the other. Like Henson was a counterculture guy. Like you can tell he's upset about the state of the world pretty constantly. And so Doc Hopper doesn't have a change of heart or anything. Doc Hopper's just an evil motherfucker through and through. So like, because at the end, Kermit gives him this whole monologue about like, if you really hate me and you really like hate me and my friends that much, you can just kill me.
Yeah.
And then Doc Hopper considers, goes, he takes his hat off and he rubs his hair and he's like, all right, boys, kill him. It's so good.
It is great. That is a fantastic part. It is really funny to realize sort of at one point, during when they were writing the screenplay, that they were just going to have Doc Hopper like sort of redeem himself at the end, but they're like, no, let's just keep him bad the whole way through.
Right, like he's just a piece of shit. And it's like, that's fine. Like he's a villain. He's like a douchebag capitalist who wants to just kill this random fucking frog.
Corporate scumbag.
Which also brings to mind like the Howard the Duck question, which is like, in this world, what are the Muppets? Are they puppets? Are they animals? Are they people? Do they have rights? Because like they are canonically animals in some ways, because like when they go to like Orson Welles' office at the end, his secretary is like, I'm allergic to animal hair, and so like the Muppets are okay, so they're animals.
Oh, okay,
but
yeah.
they can talk, unlike other animals which exist in this world and are just animals. Do they have rights? If Doc Hopper were to kill Kermit, is that murder, or is Kermit just a frog and Kermit has no rights as a frog?
God. I'm trying to wrap my brain around this. It begs
this question, like, what is their like political status? And it's really funny. It doesn't matter, but it's like, in the Howard the Duck way of like the Howard the Duck series. I say that because there's a Howard the Duck comics run, which is Howard the Duck a citizen? Is he a person? Does he have rights? And when you create Howard the Duck as a character, that's not a question that you ask, but the moment you start having him exist in the world enough, and the moment the Muppets are interacting with enough real people, you have to start wondering, what are they?
This is why I got Chance on, everyone. He asked the important Muppet questions.
It
brings it to the table.
Answer, because I mean, obviously, like you go to like Muppets Most Wanted when like Kermit is imprisoned and stuff. Like those questions start to get
with
very
the rest,
serious.
with just other like humans. Like no, surely that's actually a good point. I'm going to assume it's one of those things that fluctuates throughout Muppet media, where sometimes
exactly
it doesn't. Yeah, it's just going to be
the
one
quote
of those
unquote
things.
rules are totally inconsistent. But it's a fun question to ask whenever you're like, is Doc Hopper committing murder? Like, is this like, is he hired like a hitman to like murder a person, or is he just going to kill a frog?
Interesting. And I mean, like, yeah, the whole, obviously we haven't really touched on it yet, but like the whole movie, sort of the crux of the storytelling happens throughout a road trip. So you got to ask yourself, does like Fozzie have like a real license, or does he have to have a specific bear license, or not even
Does he
that,
have a license
Muppet
at
license?
all?
And does
Like,
he have it? Yeah, I mean, is he just, yeah, this is it. These
you
are the
never
questions.
know. He definitely owns that car, and they purchase a car as well in the movie, right? So
They
like
do. Yeah, they're
that
allowed to.
requires a lot of paperwork. Like,
Oh man, this is it. This is like, maybe it's not so much quote unquote nice core as people are as presuming it is. It's got a lot of complex questions about
there's a
it.
lot of complexities there, and it's like, like we know the Muppets have to do paperwork because at the end when Orson Welles is like, get the standard rich and famous contract for Kermit the Frog, like he's signing a contract. So
Yeah.
he has enough like legal power to sign a contract, a binding contract with like a
Wow.
company that is primarily staffed by humans. So
Oh
like,
man, interesting.
what's the deal?
And that's the other thing too, where it's like there are clearly you're gonna hate me, but I completely forgot their names. The two older men Muppets.
Statler and
Of
Waldorf.
course, they're not animals. Of course, they're people Muppets. So what's the
They're humans,
is there sort
but they're
of
also Muppets.
is there like a tier list? Is there like human Muppets, and
Right.
then there's
And then
animal
and then that
Muppets?
we ask the age-old question, what is Gonzo?
Well, that's it.
The fuck is Gonzo?
I was gonna ask you about that because I have very sort of specific memories as a very young child watching the Muppets in space. At one point, did
Yes.
they hint that Gonzo is an alien?
I think you just need to go rewatch Muppets from
Okay,
Space, buddy.
because
I feel like
my only memory of that movie is Gonzo is heavily like sort of front and center of the
Gonzo is the main character of
is the
Muppets
main
from
character of that
Space.
movie, and I do remember a
Mhm.
massive like sort of mothership UFO at the end, and I'm trying to
Oh,
think.
there's a whole lot of Gonzo lore in Muppets from Space.
Oh, okay, I'm
How
gonna have to
canon
watch
that
it now.
is up to you, because I mean it's post Jim Henson, right? So like,
Right.
is that really the answer to what Gonzo is? How many answers that movie right? Just check it out.
Gonzo is
It's
fantastic in this movie, by the way. If I can.
Gonzo's fantastic.
Well, everyone's fantastic. There's that great bit
Listen,
where.
listen. I'm gonna tell a little
Okay.
secret
All right.
really quick
Okay.
before we move on from this, which is I've got all my Kermit merchandise, I got all my Fozzie merchandise and everything, but Gonzo's my favorite.
Oh, you've heard it hit that. No Intermissions exclusive. Oh my God, you've heard it here from the Muppet Man. That's incredible. No, I mean he probably has the funnest design too. I've always just like, even when
Oh
he's
yeah,
not talking, I'm just cracking up at just looking at him, even if he's just silent. He
he's
gets
so awesome.
He's so great. He gets one of my favorite sort of jokes in the movie where they initially pick him up on mid road trip, and he's like, "Oh, you don't want to go to Bombay to become a movie star?" And then
Yeah.
and then like Fozzie just looks at Kermit slightly and goes, "I think we picked up a weirdo."
I think we picked up a weirdo. It's so good.
Oh, it's wonderful. The whole
Yeah.
movie is filled with like great like sly out of the mouth jokes like that. It's so fun.
It's so fun. And like Gonzo just, his chicken fucking self, just what a guy. His amazingly designed plumbing car, his like plumbing truck
Yeah.
that they run into him while he's driving.
Yeah.
Amazing. Gonzo's Royal Flush, of course, from later Muppet films, but
Right.
he's a plumber, he's a chicken fucker, he's everything you could want out of a character. But like something I want to touch on also is that while he is like, I mean, ridiculous, like Gonzo is just like off the wall constantly. He's got Henrietta with him. He's got the plumbing truck and everything. He's just doing crazy bullshit. He also gets what to me is probably the most emotional moment in the movie, which is he sings the song "I'm Going to Go Back There Someday."
Right.
Which also the music in this movie, the great Paul Williams, composer of Phantom of the Paradise, composer of a million other movies,
Unbelievable.
composer of almost every single Muppet song up until recently. Wonderful, wonderful musician. Rainbow Connection is a classic, obviously, but every song in this movie is amazing. But I'm Going to Go Back There Someday is the most consistently reactive I am to this movie. Every time I see it, I tear up every time because it walks that perfect line the Muppets walks between being a little overly sentimental and still having the sort of the heft and the talent and the skill behind the scenes to back that up.
Mm-hmm.
And Williams has he writes this wonderful line in that song, which is, "There's not a word yet for old friends you've just met," which is God, like I get
Oh,
chills
man.
saying it. It's
Unbelievable
it's
stuff.
just a perfect sentiment because when he says that, you understand what that means, what that feeling is when you have that sort of connection with someone. And Gonzo gets that moment. Like Gonzo is the
Yeah.
one who gets that song, and
Yeah.
it's beautiful.
Isn't
It's
that
so
great?
wonderful. It is.
Everyone, and it's so great too because a movie of like, I think the movie is impressively at like 100-minute runtime or something, but
Mhm.
somehow like everyone gets a moment. They like dedicate enough screen time for everyone to get like
Mhm.
a little bit.
Yeah.
It's pretty great stuff. Like not it might not be sort of an important moment like what Gonzo gets, but everyone gets like a sort of, I guess you could say, like highlighted joke where they get to like the band obviously is gets like their heavily sort of moments to shine there. And I guess it all just comes naturally because as we mentioned with sort of the road trip element, as they start to approach each Muppet for the first time, that's when you sort of really get those great little interactive moments with
Oh yeah. The
it's
structure lends itself to introducing and sort of like having so many characters. But it also does a good job of like sort of picking who and where and how many. Like the Swedish Chef is barely in this movie.
that's true.
One
Yeah,
of my favorite Muppets, Swedish Chef, but like he's in the
I
theater,
didn't
but
even
he's not
think of
really in
that.
the rest of the movie.
Yeah,
And that's fine. Like you don't really miss him. Like you only have so many, and so they sort of select the ones that matter the most based on the
yeah,
plot. But what's interesting is, I mean, the degree of detail here is fantastic because it's like they're thinking, okay, how much does the audience have to know about these characters? How much do we think the audience already knows, and what if somebody knows nothing? And they're sort of balancing that constantly. The offshoot of that is also hilarious, which is that Orson Welles comes in to do his one scene, his really brief moment. And Welles, in case you don't know, is a massive Muppets fan,
that's
huge
so
Muppets
great.
fan. And he noticed that Dr. Teeth's hat was the wrong color, and he was like bickering
Really,
with Jim Henson about it. Yeah, because Dr. Teeth has a different color hat in parts of this movie. And but on top of that, another thing, hell, add to your list. A fun fact: when Orson Welles was trying to launch a talk show, he filmed a pilot, and the guests for his pilot are the Muppets. So that's available. It's floating around on YouTube, and
that's
that's just
amazing.
that's a cultural gem right there.
That's incredible. I mean, it's just even by itself just a powerful image of Orson Welles, like as Orson Welles just
Mhm.
staring down these Muppets, and that's how you end your movie. It's like so, like you couldn't be. It kind of is. I know. I'm gonna comfortably say it is pretty much like a perfect movie.
It is. Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's nothing that it doesn't live up to. There's no
No,
promise it makes at the beginning that it doesn't make good on.
right.
And that's rare. I think it's one of the only Muppet movies that does that, really. There's a lot of other great ones. There's a lot of other wonderful stuff, but like they're shooting in all directions. They're going up, down, and sideways, just trying things out. And it's why, like, up until Jim Henson's death and a little bit after, like they're still just experimenting with crazy new different ways of making these movies. And so like what a Muppet movie looks like and what it can be.
Yeah.
So that is it's great, but it's also sort of like sometimes they fail, and that's okay. Like
Yeah.
there's a noble attempt made, but this one it's perfect. Just it's a fastball down the middle, 100 miles an hour, beautiful, beautiful pitch.
I think that's a perfect way to wrap up there. You've heard it here first. So yeah, that's probably gonna do it from us um on the Muppet movie. Chance, any before we wrap up, any sort of quick jokes we left out that you quickly want to touch on before we move on? Any sort of lines of dialogue or any sort of even just plot points that we may have forgot to mention that just really sort of resonate with you a bit?
Patriotism swells in the heart of the American bear.
Oh man, I mean that's the thing too. We could probably sit here for another 3 hours just talking about the Muppet movie alone and still leave out shit.
Oh yeah, you just gotta watch it and then watch it again and then watch it again. It's the
Uh,
gift that keeps on giving.
yes, that's it. Touching hands with God. Yeah, that 100%. But no, that's probably going to do it from us on the Muppet movie. We'll be right back. We are talking True Lies.
How'd it go at the convention, honey?
You were the big hit of the show. It's fantastic. I love the computer business.
For 15 years, Harry Tasker's been leading a double life.
Mr. President, one of our best men is inside.
Transmitting now.
Right on time.
I don't believe I've met you before.
Rehnquist. Harry Rehnquist.
Listen to the following code word. Helen. Helen.
Now, they're about to collide.
What's your exit strategy?
I'm gonna walk right out of the front gate.
May I see your invitation, please?
Sure. Here's my invitation.
Yeah, that worked good. Right out the old front gate.
Can you lean back a second?
Mr. Tasker's office.
Hi, it's Helen. Is he in?
Harry's in a sales meeting, Mrs. Tasker.
It's not like he's saving the world or anything.
I see, this is the problem with terrorists. They're really inconsiderate when it comes to people's schedules. Could you press the button for the top floor, please?
Hi, Helen. Harry forgot something back at the office.
All right, we are back and we are talking True Lies, the 1994 American action comedy film with a cast that involves Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jamie Lee Curtis, Tom Arnold, Bill Paxton, and Art Malik, and is directed by the one, the only. You may have heard of this gentleman before, one Jim Cameron. Oh, all right, this is it. The first James Cameron on the podcast, and we're going to have from the sounds of it, a bit of a conflicting sort of ideals between the two people discussing it today. So I do want to start.
Yes.
I'll even though this is a personal favorite of mine, which Chance may just simply cringe at just hearing that. I will bestow the honors and let my esteemed guest here kick us off, because I have been intrigued from the get-go as soon as he watched it on what was happening there. So Chance, please, your thoughts. I want to get your thoughts on True Lies.
Yeah, so I mean, I want to start, like, I love Big Dick Jim Cameron. I think even when he's a little stupid, which he is frequently, like I get something out of him, right?
I think,
like,
sorry to cut you off quickly. I think there is sort of different levels of. I think the stupid is always there. I think in terms of the impactfulness that actually comes through in the finished product.
Exactly, like
differs, but
I don't think that, like, the degree to which he's sort of a bozo in Avatar 1, where he's basically doing like dances of wolves with aliens, like that's a degree of like really silly that kind of gets in the way of that movie for me sometimes.
Okay.
Versus Way of Water, where I have like no issue accepting it. I'm like, I love this. Like, Way of Water is just such an amazing experience. Like, you know, that nearly 200-minute movie, and I could watch it again right now. Like, the sort of just like almost like naive sincerity of that movie is absolutely incredible. And I mean, Way of Water is one of the great theatrical experiences of the 21st century. And hell, I mean, like, I enjoyed Terminator. I enjoyed Terminator 2. I have the controversial take, I guess, but I didn't know it was controversial until I said it in front of people, which is that I like Terminator 1 more than Terminator 2.
I thought that was just
good, but like
common.
Yeah, I thought so too. I was like, Terminator 1 is like the better movie.
I don't know how anyone
cool.
could prefer the second one.
But regardless, this is all to say, like, I didn't expect to walk away from True Lies with a sort of ultimate, like, okay, I was impressed by some of that, or I liked this, but like overall, I kind of like wanted it to like wrap up, and I was like disappointed by a lot of it. Which is insane and like kind of sad for me. Like, it's one of the only James Cameron movies I hadn't seen. I'd been waiting to watch it for so long. So when you suggested it, I was like, sure, like, I like James Cameron.
Yeah.
And okay, I don't know how to sort of start my critique of it, so except to say there are a lot of thrillers that are adjacent to it that have released beforehand in the wake of Die Hard. Die Hard sort of starts this like secondary trend of action movies with the flimsy family man and the very like anti-terrorist plots like setup, right? Terrorism is in vogue culturally in America. I mean, it's Die Hard is a very like, post-Reagan movie. It's it's after 8 years of Reagan presidency and the war in Afghanistan and Iran-Contra and everything going on there. And so you have this sort of new zeitgeist that is informing what is the American action movie. I mean, massive divorce rates in America, obviously, after sort of the rise of feminism to prominence in American culture, and that sort of starts to chip away at the traditional concepts of like the marital institution in the culture at large. And so you have all of these things coming together to create the new outline for what an action movie is, what it can be. You end up with your Lethal Weapons, your Die Hards, and True Lies, which is very much of that ilk. There's a father figure who is a law enforcement agent of some kind, whose family gets caught up in a terrorist plot, right? And that could describe God, who knows how many movies in the 90s. And that's not necessarily a problem, right? Like, I love Die Hard to death. Like, Die Hard is just one of those beat for beat, just super, super awesome, super cool, super well put together action movies that just hits all the buttons it needs to hit. What I was at first pleasantly surprised by and then sort of let down by is the fact that True Lies has a lot going on and spends a lot of time in the sort of family drama element of that spy movie. It's got a 2 hour and 20-minute runtime, which is pretty fucking hefty for an action movie.
Can't believe
if you're making a movie that long, if you're making a movie that long, you've got to grab me, right? Like, I am putting trust in the filmmaker that when they make a promise, they're going to deliver.
Yeah.
Sometime in that 220-minute runtime. So it starts like a pretty like straight ahead spy movie. Arnold's being Arnold, being suave, doing goofy bullshit spy garbage from the 90s, killing people on fucking snow skis. Awesome stuff. And then it's like, now this movie is going to be about his wife possibly being unfaithful with him, with a truly amazing Bill Paxton, who is this pathetic used car salesman who's pretending to be a spy. And then all of this wraps up with like it tying back into a terrorist plot the movie started on. And so it sort of starts on one plot, goes to the Bill Paxton thing, then goes back to the other one. Like the middle act, the second act, has absolutely nothing to do really with the first or third. It's only the reason that Jamie Lee Curtis really gets involved in the rest of it. Now, the issues I have are twofold.
Okay.
The first is that I'm not someone generally to balk at the content of a movie if I find it a little less than kosher politically. I mean, obviously, one of my favorite filmmakers is John Ford, who's notoriously thorny, and I think grappling with the personal and political implications of a film is something that can make it really valuable if it sort of is interesting in the way it reflects cultural values. Even those values on your own can be engaging. I think that's very true of Die Hard, right? Lots of sort of ideas there that America had at the time about terrorism, about the global economy and stuff. They're just sort of that aren't central to that movie, but are part of it just by virtue of it existing in that society. Now, True Lies goes a little far in some places for me. For a movie that's just supposed to be so light and fluffy and enjoyable, there's just a lot of hate in its heart. I said earlier that this is James Cameron coming off his third divorce, which it was. He and Catherine Bigelow had just gotten divorced around the time they started making this movie. Around that time, he also wrote Strange Days, which was directed by Bigelow, which I think is, if you're going to look at one exploration of that divorce specifically and the bitterness that James Cameron holds in his heart, I think Strange Days is the much more interesting version of that. Wonderful movie. Ralph Fiennes can see into other people's bodies, and there's trigger warning. There's a very, very bizarre scene where he witnesses a rape from the POV of another person. Very, very interesting. Engages with that sort of those really, really contentious gender dynamics in a way that I think is much more interesting than True Lies, which is just one of the most blatantly misogynistic movies I've ever seen.
Oh, it's insane. It's crazy.
To a degree that's not even like satirical. Like, there's just a lot of hatred in this movie. Like, the way it treats Jamie Lee Curtis is insane. She's just like this bumbling, incompetent wife who's like supposedly like very homely and like unattractive and like is just fumbling with stuff all the time. Um, every man is like measured by like the length of his dick.
Yeah.
And like that can be fun in a movie like Predator, like, where it's all about like dick measuring contests and gun sizes and shit. But like it's all about humiliating Bill Paxton for like his small dick and
Yeah.
everything. And it's like
Bill Paxton
that
pisses his pants for a maximum of 2 times in
twice.
this. Yeah, twice.
Twice.
And he
And
looks at the camera and says it too, which is great.
it's wonderful. And Paxton is my favorite part of this movie. I think Paxton is an actor like I always love. Like I consistently like find him interesting. He's very charismatic. He's very funny in this movie. I think the dick measuring stuff with Schwarzenegger and Paxton and like a little bit of Tom Arnold in there is like the best stuff in this movie. It's the of the sort of hyper patriarchal like worldview this movie has, the most entertaining version of that is when they're doing that all that shit with Bill Paxton. All the stuff with Jamie Lee Curtis is just so fucked. And just,
Yeah.
it's not to mention its view of the terrorists in the movie. Obviously, Art Malik plays the primary terrorist, Salim, and God, just the movie is just so fundamentally unengaged with the politics that it's wading into there. Like it does not give a shit what they represent or who these people are or what their values are or why they might be doing what they're doing. And like obviously that's not true for Die Hard either. Like Die Hard doesn't give a fuck about like Hans Gruber's ideology. But the thing about Gruber is that he's much less of a offensive cultural stereotype
Yeah.
than Salim is. Gruber is a movie villain that needs to be there because he's a movie villain with a gang of other movie villains who work with him that have no particular ideology and no particular association with any kind of nation or group. This is just a fucking caricature of like Middle Eastern terrorists, and it's like at certain points really hard to watch. Especially once like they abduct Arnold and Jamie and they bring them back to the hideout and they're like chanting and stuff, and it's just it hurt a little bit. Especially I mean it's not very thought out. And on top of that, it's just not entertaining. Like it's just not even deploying these stereotypes in a way that's complicated or interesting or different. It's just let's take a stock Middle Eastern terrorist and just slap him on this movie so we have a villain. Really, really, really stuff that makes you ill. And the other problem I have with the movie is that it makes promises and doesn't really follow up on them. I think we can get into that in detail, but I think this movie sets a lot of things up and then just doesn't pay them off in a way that's at all satisfying. I also think the movie blows its load in the first act with the motorcycle versus horse chase, very adaptation, very machine versus nature, horse versus motorcycle chase scene, which is incredibly well staged, very, very cool, great action scene, and it doesn't have an action scene to rival that for the rest of the movie.
Interesting. Well, that was a great way to kick us off, Chance.
Yeah, it's a very big monologue, but I had a lot of stuff to get off my chest, and I
did enjoy that. I did enjoy that. For me, I was about to say Die Hard. It's very early in the morning here. I'm sorry. For me, True Lies has always been, in terms of James Cameron's filmography, the black sheep. It's always been, even before I watched it, it's always been the one that's been interesting to me because I'm like, okay, it's like his third sort of collaboration with Arnie. It's the one that I don't really hear anyone talk about. And then as I watch the movie, probably, I understand why people don't really, probably don't have too much to say about it. Because while I do enjoy the movie immensely, I do agree with Chance specifically about I do feel the villains are just very, very bad, just very, slap a stick a bad guy just in there so they can die sort of thing, just for someone to Arnie to shoot at pretty much. Unfortunately, yeah, the offensiveness does come along with it because I will admit I do love James Cameron, but he is a very boneheaded gentleman.
Yes.
He's
great filmmaker.
He's
great filmmaker. Heart of Darkness.
Yes. And this one I've always sort of gravitated towards True Lies because for whatever reason, and I can't really say this about too many other movies, but I really do enjoy the clunkiness of it because it definitely seems a movie to me where James Cameron, I know this didn't happen because doing some research and it was all very thought out, but the way the the finished project seems to me anyway was that James Cameron just pretty much set up set piece by set piece, just whatever he felt like doing on the day. Like, okay, today let's get like Arnie on a horse chasing the terrorist on a motorbike, as Chance mentioned before. Or, you know, let's get sort of let's involve Jamie Lee Curtis's character, the wife, into the plot now because let's get the runtime extended there, or let's like get a whole sequence where we blow up the Keys Bridge just because we can. And that's always, and I do love, because I was looking at some stuff at James Cameron yesterday, and he's always, even like as a young kid, he's always wanted to sort of do an action sequence where that involves the Grand Canyon, and wanted to sort of implement sort of an action sequence like that into this movie, but obviously they couldn't get the plotting to work in the Grand Canyon, so he made some allowances for the Keys Bridge, which is just like a technical feat. I can't believe, like, to this day, like you have to agree that's pretty impressive sort of set piece there.
Oh yeah, I mean, impressive set pieces with Cameron are a given. Like the scale of this. I mean, I think at the time it was made, it was the most expensive movie ever filmed. And you can see that there's a lot of money on screen in this. I mean, the staging is obviously very good. The action is very competently directed. They do a lot of cool shit. But I think after that motorcycle horse chase, I'm sort of left a little stale. I think action is one of those things that if the scale gets large enough, it's really easy for it to start to stall. I think scale is a very difficult thing because the motorcycle horse chase is perfect because there's so much spectacle and they're doing so much with that, right? And you've got like all these amazing horse stunts and motorcycle stunts and everything that's going on. But by the time you get to the Keys Bridge and the jet fighter sequence, there starts to be a lack of like physicality there, and it's like two action figures that are colliding with each other, and there's no real like there's no Hong Kong angle to it, right? Like, I love talking about Hong Kong action because it's the gold standard, but like Jackie Chan is always about like how far can he jump, how far can he throw this baseball bat, how many punches can he land before like this car hits him. Like it's the stakes are always so immediate, and by the time they're like blowing up the Keys Bridge and stuff, I'm like, all right, whatever. And it's like, and there's also a good way to handle scale that massive, like Lord of the Rings, Helm's Deep, one of the greatest set pieces ever filmed. Like,
right? Yeah,
it does a great job of the macro battle. Which if it was just the macro battle, it's a little bit much. But if you zero in, like, what's Aragorn doing, what's Legolas doing, you have all these sort of smaller character-focused, tension-focused action beats that are about the sort of micro details that I think True Lies has in some moments and doesn't in others.
No, that's fair. That's fair. And I do like, as you mentioned, sort of, I guess the runtime of this movie is intimidating, to say the least, because for a movie that's just pretty much, you know, the spy movie, but he's also got to deal with the family life at home for 2 hours and 20 minutes. That is a very long runtime for a.
It is.
It does seem to me that, like, you know, as Chance mentioned before, sort of the first act, you get sort of you get a quick rundown of Arnie as sort of the spy he is. You know, he's sneaking around the mansion. He's you know, tech savvy. You got the guys in the van, sort of directing him where he needs to go. He's taking guys out. He's coming up through the floor of ice there, and sort of you know, getting connections with you know, with soon. Oh, I forgot the character's name off the top of my head, but like sort of tangoing with her, getting intel on her. She ends up becoming sort of more involved in the plot.
I can't remember her character.
Yeah. And then so that's great. You sort of get the first.
Oh, Juno Skinner.
That's it.
Not a name for real.
Definitely. Yeah, that's it. Juno Skinner. Sort of getting intel on her. So that's great. You get the established. Okay, Arnie is obviously very good at what he does. And then obviously balancing the family life at home, stuff's falling apart there, as you can tell, because he's not obviously giving enough time a day to his family. Jamie Lee Curtis seems very burnt out in the marriage. And then the whole sort of second act of the movie is their marriage, and the whole like the completely terrorist aspect is just completely removed from the movie. And it's even though I do love the movie, it's kind of daunting where you're like, wait, weren't we doing something about terrorists like 30 minutes ago?
Yeah.
And then what I like about it though is that despite the fact I think it is a hair too long, it sort of
Yeah.
does blend the first act and second act. It marries them in the third one, where it's like, okay, now we got Jamie Lee
Yes.
involved, we got the marriage involved now, okay, and now we're going to throw the terrorist back in there. So it's sort of, it does,
Right.
while it did take a long time to get to this destination, we do have the first act and second act married up now.
Yeah. And I think I have two sort of angles on that, which is like, by the time we get to the second act, I'm glad I'm there because the sort of spy shtick is starting to wear thin. And once you do the horse motorcycle thing, I'm kind of like, how do you up the ante from there? And I was really excited that it completely changed modes. And like, I love Bill Paxton in this movie. I can't say how much I love Bill Paxton in this movie. He's so
great.
fucking good. I love Bill Paxton. But I was excited when it was that, and then like, I'm like, oh, so the rest of the movie is this now. And I didn't want the terrorists to come back, but I knew, like, I felt like I know what this plot looks like. I've seen this movie before, right?
Right.
Like, I've seen so many movies like I know it's coming back. I didn't want it to. I wanted the rest of the movie to just be sicko shit about like Bill Paxton.
Just
like
Bill Paxton sneaking
just
around with
really
people's wives.
vengeful, like Strange Days-esque, like just bullshit about Bill Paxton. I would have ate that up. Like, I would have really eaten that up. But no, and it goes back, and it starts to like become the more traditional plot that it has. And the other sort of bit about that which is that I really don't buy the family drama. It doesn't really work.
Oh,
for
really?
me in a lot of ways. And I think I have a couple of angles on it, which is the first is that like, so Way of Water has kind of similar family drama, has a very similar philosophy about what the family is, which is that when Jake Sully has his narration about like a father's job is to like protect his family and everything, very sort of outdated patriarchal ideas about what the family unit is, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't matter as much in Way of Water because Way of Water fleshes out all the characters and their relationships so well. Regardless, like you're invested in all of them and they're always kind of doing something. I never understand why Arnold likes his family in this movie. Like there's just a kind of like he's a father and his job is to protect his wife and daughter and to keep them like possessions. It very much feels like it's upset that he's losing Jamie Lee Curtis. He doesn't feel as upset that he's not giving her something. It's like, am I losing my wife to this fuck? Am I losing my wife to this fucking like cheesemo? And it's like, it doesn't have the sort of heft that like that the family in the Avatar movies does, because like you understand the sort of ideology, the commonalities, the experiences that bind them, and like that makes a sort of like a bozo idea of a family work more in those movies. And here it's just kind of like, yeah, that's his wife and daughter, he's gotta protect and keep them because he's their dad. And it's like with Jamie Lee Curtis, there's a lot of complications to that. There's a lot of sort of things you can unpack just in terms of like the way it treats her as a character and as an individual, and like the fact that it really doesn't give a lot of credence to the ways in which she's bored. I mean, as a performer, she gives a little bit to it. I think she adds a little more depth than there is in the screenplay. But then you turn that around to Dana, the daughter, which one of the best moments that Arnie gets is just going, Dana! I love the way he says that. But dude, she has like 2 scenes in this goddamn movie. She steals shit from his buddy, and then she shows up later and she's already been kidnapped. She's in the background of a scene like where Arnold doesn't come home for his birthday celebration, and that's it.
That's
like,
always
you don't even see her get kidnapped. She's not a fucking character.
No,
she's
that's
literally
always
there for him to disappoint and then rescue. And I'll say this: someone else that gets no fucking arc, and I'm this is aside from the point a little bit. It's a tiny sidebar, but I was pissed about it. Grant Heslov, frequent George Clooney collaborator, Grant Heslov is in this movie as another guy on Schwarzenegger's team named Faisal. And Faisal is in the opening scene and gets some stuff to do, does a little bit of exposition later, and then he shows up at the end as a fake news cameraman.
Oh, I love that. That was
pulls
great.
a gun out, kills 3 cameramen, and then doesn't do anything else. They literally just put him in the third act because it felt like, oh, he was there in the beginning. We've got to drop him in the end. He serves no purpose, has no goddamn character arc. I like to see him because I like him as a character. I like Grant Heslov's performance, but he does nothing. He has no purpose. They'd have to slap him in there because they forgot about him.
I didn't mind that because at the start, Charlton Heston pretty much tells him he's got a small dick. He's like, "What are you doing on this team? Like,
Yeah.
you're just a kid." And then by the end, he
Yeah.
gets that little heroic moment where he kills 3 of the terrorists. I'm
But
like,
there's no
that's
build up to that
fine.
because the movie forgets about Faisal in the middle of the movie, right? Like, Tom Arnold's
Unfortunately.
character is still around the entire time, but like, I didn't feel the triumph that Faisal must have felt like when he does that because there's just he's there at the beginning, he does a good job hacking, and Charlton Heston tells him a little dick, and then later in the movie he kills some guys with a gun, and he just doesn't exist in between.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just trying to think of from. It's interesting because look, I can't defend that. I'm just trying to think it as because well, I'll start here. I completely, unfortunately, you are correct with the Dana aspect because even from my first watch where I fell in love with it, I'm like, okay, the daughter is clearly set up there to have just an extended set piece there at the end. It is great. I do love sort of the because to me it very much feels like in terms of the ending with set pieces, it does very much feel like we're executive producers like, all right, Jim, okay, we've got 3 cards here with 3 different set pieces. You get to choose which one you want to end True Lies on, and he just grabbed all 3 of them and went, let's do all of them. Completely jarring that I off the top of my head cannot think of a movie at this scale anyway that just there's no way around it. It has 3 separate climaxes.
Yeah, and it's like what if Die Hard had 3 climaxes? What if he jumps off a building, he gets in a fighter jet, and he blows up a bridge?
That to me very feels like Jim Cameron going, okay, so for everyone bored with all the marriage stuff that took up like the entirety of the second act, I'm going to give you what your money's worth and,
we're going to
give you 3 endings.
But it's like I want a balance there. Like and I think there's a degree to which I'm willing to forgive or not forgive a movie where it's like you can have a bozo ass movie with a bunch of crazy action set pieces and not have those through lines, not have that consistency, not have those setups and payoffs and stuff. Because those are all made up anyways, right? Like that's not like a real thing a movie has to have. But this movie does sort of rely on them, right? Like it's sort of like we're setting this up so we can do this later. But like if you're not gonna deliver on everything and you're just gonna go crazy, you gotta keep that runtime down, or else I'm gonna start to get pretty fucking bored. Like if you're just feeding me a bunch of stuff and it's not really going anywhere, and I'm not really invested in it, like I'm gonna start to check out, and I'm not gonna because scale alone isn't always enough, you know. Like that, I say that Die Hard ending, we jumped off the building once. It's like, yeah, but that jump off the building has so much like emotional buildup. Like there's such a payload of like. It's such a catharsis on an action level, on an emotional level. Like they have everything moving towards that point. So when all of that stuff collides, it's in one moment and it happens all at once, and you get this perfect, beautiful moment of him jumping off the building with the fire hose and shit. Like it's just
I mean, not to you don't get you are 100% correct, but to me, I feel like it's very much where Die Hard is I guess you could say more earnest in sort of that approach. This to me definitely felt like Arnie and Jim were just like laughing their asses off the entire time making this. Like it is definitely very much sort of just like, you know, a James Bond farce where like what if James Bond had like like what if James Bond had you know had all this government, you know, spy equipment, and he used it to see if his wife was like fucking another guy, and like that takes up like 50% of the movie. And I'm like, okay, that alone as sort of, you know, for a movie like we just talked about previously, the most expensive movie up to this point, I'm like, to that aspect of the plot feature so prominently is just like, that's so Jim Cameron.
It is so Jim Cameron, and I think. But the issue that I still come back to is that like he's up to the task of directing those set pieces, but I'm not sure he's entirely up to the task of the family drama, right? Like if you're gonna have a plot where it's like the thing is he's using all this equipment to like fuck around with his wife and like the guy she's seeing and everything, like I feel like you almost need somebody with a better eye for that kind of drama, for that kind of like moment. Like it's to design those kinds of moments, design that kind of drama, and then to tie it to those set pieces requires a lot of skill. And it's I think James Cameron's up to 50% of the job, and it just doesn't always land for me because even the wife stuff is just kind of one note. like she's not even actually cheating on him. He doesn't really have to reckon with anything because they
That
do the whole
makes me
thing in the
laugh so hard
interrogator,
every
and she
time.
didn't actually cheat on him, and it's funny, but it's dramatically inert. You know, if
Oh
you're gonna
no.
premise the entire middle act of your movie on it, it's just like, okay.
Oh no, don't get me wrong. Yeah, it makes me
Yeah.
laugh because it makes Arnie look so fucking dumb. Because he's
Yeah.
no, let me rephrase that. Dumb, but like just overtly paranoid, I guess you could say.
He's overtly paranoid, but it's like it sort of excuses his paranoia. His emotion is genuine, and it sort of transfers a lot of the sort of machismo bozo bullshit to Tom Arnold, right? Like he's there to take the load off Arnie, so we still sympathize with him.
Yeah.
And it's like I wish the movie sort of took Arnold to account more, or made him a little more stupid, or just heightened that drama to a degree that it's interesting, that like it actually forces him and Jamie Lee Curtis to like reckon with their relationship, or like play out their relationship in a funny way, to sort of play out the antagonism in a funny way. But the reveal is that there really wasn't a lot of antagonism after all, and they were both just being silly. And it's like, okay, like we're just getting that out of the way and simplifying it so we can have a 30-minute set piece at the end. Like you've had me sit through the last hour of this movie to go, okay, anyways, fighter jet. I'm like, what the fuck?
Chance, sometimes all it takes to save a marriage is stop some terrorism attacks. That's all it takes. It's as simple as that. If only more married couples took that into account, you just got to stop some terrorists.
And you know what I love about Die Hard? It doesn't fucking save his marriage.
Well, I mean,
it kind of does in the first one, and then when the moment they follow it up, it's like, yeah, no, this guy's life is still falling apart. This guy's a fucking psychopath.
It's interesting actually, because whether or not Cameron was going through the divorce at the time, if that sort of element would have been so prominent.
It's so you can feel his divorce all over it. It's like Temple of Doom for James Cameron, where it's just like
extremely
divorce mode. Like,
yeah, that's true. You can feel
Temple
sort of
of
the
Doom
seething
has
anger.
like a similarly like shaggy, seething anger in it. And the difference is that I think Temple of Doom with like Spielberg and Lucas, they have a much better idea of sort of how to channel that into a movie. I think there are elements of Temple of Doom that are also similarly racist and misogynistic,
of course,
to an insane degree, because they're very angry and very bitter at the state of the world when they made that movie. But Temple of Doom is under 2 hours.
Well, you know what? This is the thing. I was like, up to the corner, I'm like, I'm gonna bring the heat. How dare Chance talk about so negatively of True Lies? But everything you're saying is valid. Like this is it.
I can't. That's one of the things I can't fault someone for enjoying it, because there are so many things to admire about it. But I think just the overall experience for me just sort of doesn't hang together for those reasons, right? It's like it's mostly overall structural issues. Like the moment to moment construction of the thing is pretty damn good, because James Cameron's like an experienced filmmaker.
Oh, the movie looks great
really
too.
Competent like stylist and like action filmmaker, but like I feel like with the moment you zoom out and look at the thing on a macro level, I'm just kind of like, oh. Okay, like it doesn't. There's nothing there to bring me back to it, right? Like I don't feel like I'd want to revisit. Okay. I think that's the ultimate letdown. Is that it's all right, but it should have been great.
Interesting. No, that's a fair point. I mean, do you have like sort of a? I'll go here. Do you have sort of a particular favorite moment, even though you weren't too big on it as a whole? Do you have like a moment where you go, oh yeah, that's pretty good?
Oh my god, dude! I've said it a million times. The horse motorcycle chase.
Yeah, of course.
That's as good as any other action scene I've ever watched. Like the moment they go into the hotel and like he's riding the motorcycle through, and Arnold's on the horse just riding to the hotel. And he jumps with a band, and everybody's watching the horse pass by. And they take the horse and the motorcycle up in the elevator.
Oh, and the standoff.
The motorcycle over the ledge into the pool, and then the horse like won't jump, and Arnold's hanging onto the reins, and he's having to get the horse back. That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's amazing. It's an amazing set piece.
Yeah,
one of the best action scenes I've ever watched. And then the rest of the movie was downhill after that.
Really?
That's my pretty strong take in terms of like set pieces. I don't think anything in the third act tops that set piece.
Not even the incredibly impressive like all in camera Jamie Lee pull out of the limo roof.
Nope.
Chance, what?
It's cool as hell, but there's nothing in it that really gets my goat, quite like the fucking horse in a hotel,
That
horse in an
fucking
elevator.
that fucking
It's the when he's talking to Tom Arnold and he goes, "I have to hurry, my horse is getting tired," and you're like, "What the fuck is horse?"
That fucking to go to the limo. That fucking I can't believe what I'm hearing. Those like intimate shots of both their close-ups as like the
Well, I think part of the reason that moment fails for me is that I don't buy that relationship, right? I don't have to give a damn about what Arnold wants or what Art Malik wants in that chase. I'm just in it for the love of the game, man. Like, I'm in it for the love of the form, for the love of movies. Like you have to do that for cinema. You had to get Arnold on that fucking horse for the sake of cinema.
Man, that's a good argument though. I'll give you that. It's for me though. I'm just like I remove the sort of because I guess you could say I'm just trying to think as a whole. I do have quite a lot of issues as of James Cameron's sort of a storyteller. I guess you could say. To me, he's all visual. Like that's where he's and obviously, you know, we've talked about some maybe dated issues that happen in True Lies, and to me, sort of the entire third act is just a complete visual like that. I have to talk that incredible sort of the pull out of the limo is just an incredible sort of stunt work.
It's a great stunt and it's very impressive, but it's a moment, you know.
Okay,
it's
yeah,
a really impressive moment. That chase scene has 10 stunts as insane as that. Like where they're running that horse through a fucking building, man.
through a building,
like,
and in an elevator too.
Yeah, the amount of crazy stunts they're doing in that scene are just as impressive as the limo pull, right? Like it's sort of like in Police Story when Jackie gets to the mall and he knows he's got one.
Right.
Once he does that 3-story drop, he can't top it.
Right.
So he holds that to the end, does the 3-story drop, and then the movie ends 2 minutes later. Like he knows he's got one bullet left in the fucking cylinder.
Right.
He's just waiting to pull the trigger.
Right.
And
no, that's fair. Yeah, that's actually a good comparison. That a lot of that sort of I always forget to that horse sequence. Like to kick it off, that whole bathroom fight too, and then that bleeds into the
bathroom fight.
It really does sort of take me away every time I watch it.
Great gunfight. Oh my god, this is like a whole like cut away to the old man in the bathroom stall.
Yeah.
Awesome gag. All the fucking gunfight stuff in there is amazing. When he's like shooting into all the stalls, and you know Arnold's in the last one, like waiting to jump out and cross the room. That's amazing.
The room's riddled with bullets, and they're in a bathroom, so there's like just water spraying everywhere, and it's all wet, and it's just like
how he's using a little like the eyeglasses like camera gadget to like watch the guys behind him, so he moves his head.
The cigarette packet.
Without even looking at him. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great mechanic. Great action scene.
Yeah.
And it's the smallness of that moment, right? Of like oh, he's got the cigarette packet on the counter, so I know that he's gonna move his head when the guy goes to shoot him. Versus like the shootout whenever he and Jamie Lee Curtis are escaping later, it's like, oh, Arnold's just gonna get some guns and kill all these fuckers. And the only thing that scene really has going for it is like the gag where she drops the gun down
and it rolls down the stairs,
which isn't even that great. Like I've seen that gag before. All that has is Arnold just dropping bodies, which I can get in fucking Predator, right? Like he can go nutso in Predator too. Like I don't have to watch True Lies for this. What I watch True Lies for is like the fucking cigarette packet thing. Like it's the horse and the motorcycle.
It's all the fun sort of James Bond gadgets.
It's all the super unique, interesting set pieces that it's doing in that first act.
It's really interesting to sort of, in retrospect now as we watch it, because you know, sort of the first set piece where after he gets the intel and he's escaping and the guy's on the skis and everything, that was like dialed down to 1/10 of what it originally was. Apparently like Cameron wanted like at one point a helicopter chasing him, and Arnie was going to shoot down the helicopter and then ski down the fucking hill on like the carcass of the burnt down helicopter, and apparently
because James Cameron can't stop himself from blowing his load. Like,
no,
it's an amazing set piece. But what I found so interesting, and I was thinking about this, I'm thinking of James Bond, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the ski set piece in True Lies, which is very impressive. The whole time I was thinking, man, I'd kind of rather be watching On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which is like maybe my favorite James Bond movie.
Oh, it's a great movie.
I love that movie. Love it to death. I mean, Soderbergh loves that movie as well for obvious reasons. One of the most well-edited movies of all time.
Yeah.
And it's just like the particular editing rhythms and the sort of smoothness of like the ski chase in that movie.
Yeah.
It's like it's a little more satisfying to me when I'm watching it. It's not about like just fitting as much crap in it as they can. It's like they're really setting up the geography of that space and like and playing with it. Like there's no moment in that final gunfight that sort of uses space and time like the Untouchables with the baby carriage shot, the baby carriage shootout.
Oh, right.
Like,
Down the stairs, yeah.
and that's a great gimmick. Like that's a great thing. It's using all its tools to like say, okay, we could just have these guys shoot some people on a staircase, but we're gonna show it to you in the coolest possible way. We're gonna use every tool in our toolbox to make that as awesome as possible. And that's how those early set pieces feel in like in the mall with the horse and the motorcycle and the bathroom and everything. And how the later ones just kind of feel like let's do a big thing. Like Honor Majesty's Secret Service doesn't really have a big thing. That movie's great because I'm gonna spoil the ending of that movie really quick for anybody that hasn't seen On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Cover your ears, just hit the 15-second skip button. But the whole build to being that they kill Diana Rigg after they get married. Oh my fucking God.
Right.
Like they know they can't top any of the action scenes, so they just do something so emotionally brutal to you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like True Lies doesn't even do that. Like they don't have a kicker emotionally to sort of give that some weight.
Yeah, that's true. I would also give it though that I would be sort of I guess you could say whiplash if James Cameron had a single bit of earnest sort of emotional beat in any of his movies. I guess you could say leeway to Avatar
2.
Yeah.
What an emotional movie.
It's taken him a fucking long time to sort of develop any sort of emotional sensibilities because
I mean Titanic, a couple years after True Lies, like that's all soap opera, that's all melodrama,
that's
man.
True.
Like that's all melodrama, and hell, even Terminator 2, like people choke up whenever the T-800 does the thumbs up as it sinks into the lava. Like there's
true.
emotional heft to that. And I feel like True Lies is lacking even that. Like that's such like that T2 moment is such a simple emotional beat, but like it lands because it's simple. It lands because like that feeling is so eminently understandable.
It definitely does feel like, as you mentioned, like there is sensibilities there in Terminator, and obviously like that's the entirety runtime of Titanic, but it definitely just does feel like life, the art imitating life of the filmmaker at the time, because obviously, we've talked about the divorce, and obviously he was in a certain mindset where he's like, yeah, I'm just gonna be cynical, and all this marriage thing is just bullshit.
God's angry man.
Yes, yeah, and we're just gonna make.
What's so interesting is that he reaffirms the sort of like American family unit, the American marriage in the movie, right? He's bitter about it, but he's bitter because he's lost control, right? Mm-hmm. He's not upset at the sort of institution of marriage. He's upset that it's not functioning like the quote unquote way it used to.
Mm-hmm.
There's a sort of like the fact that the problem in the movie, of course, is not that Arnold doesn't like his wife.
Mm-hmm.
It's that she is beyond him, that
mm-hmm.
he can't control her, that he doesn't know everything about her, that she is essentially being her own person, right? That he has to give to her if she's going to give back to him, that a relationship goes both ways. And it's really not, he doesn't really learn that he has to in any way. Like, have you seen Strange Days?
I have. It's brilliant. I mean, it really is great.
Yes. Very interesting movie, but it's very interesting that he wrote that around the same time.
Yeah.
Because that movie has a much more bitter and a much more nuanced view, and I wonder how much of that was Bigelow, right? Coming from the other side of the same divorce.
Yeah.
But I feel like that movie offers a very interesting perspective that I feel like True Lies is just a man just shaking his fist at the clouds.
Yeah, and I mean there definitely is. I mean we've spoken about time and time again in this discussion, but there is definitely a bitterness inherent, like deep ingrained in this movie. I guess it's all interpreted on how people take it. I personally I do enjoy the bitterness on just how sort of characters treat other characters in this movie with with such sort of like just mean disdain, where sort of like Tom
Oh, they're
Arnold.
cruel.
Yeah, Tom Arnold, who plays Arnie's sort of right-hand man and best friend in this movie, Arnie tells Tom Arnold when he first discovers that his wife might be cheating on him, Tom Arnold doesn't even like embrace him or goes like, "Oh, are you okay?" The first thing he says to him is like, "Welcome to the club." And it's like laughing and just like, yeah, women are like, pretty much says to him, which is, he basically says to Arnie, just like, women are garbage, and
But to some degree, right? Like Tom Arnold and Bill Paxton are like are the butt of the joke sometimes, right?
Yeah, no, 100%.
They're not respectable men. Their views on women are obviously supposed to be manipulative and sort of misogynistic and evil. They're the patsies to draw your eye away from Arnold, right? Sort of like so you don't pay attention to what he's doing in his relationship as much. It's like, well, he doesn't think that. He cares about his family and everything. And it sort of lets him get off a little more scot-free. And it's like the fact that like at the end of the movie, it's like Jamie Lee Curtis ends up being like sexier and she doesn't dress as like conservatively as she used to and stuff. And it's just so it's like she's the one that had to be fixed, not Arnold, right? It's like she was to blame for the relationship issues and he just had to like let her know that or something. It's a really classically like a nuclear family view of a marriage. And it's like, yeah, obviously Bill Paxton and Tom Arnold are pieces of shit. Like Bill Paxton lies so he can sleep with women, and like Tom Arnold just like doesn't really even view them as people. This is I would like to see how this movie reckons with any number of sort of social revelations we've had about marriage, even before the film came out, right? Like, there are great movie relationships and movie marriages from the beginning of cinema, right?
Yeah.
That don't treat marriage and the family institution quite like this. I mean, even going back to like Bigger Than Life or The Thin Man and stuff, in the 50s and 30s respectively. This shit was outdated by the time this movie came out,
Well, I've got some news for you, and I can't wait to see how you're going to react to this. But I tried for the life of me yesterday to track it down and watch it in preparation for this, but for whatever reason, and in hindsight, it might have been a good thing that I couldn't find it and watch it. But they actually did remake this movie into a TV series that came out like last year with the same characters' names, Harry Tasker and Helen Tasker. So they have a daughter. I don't know if he's a salesman, but I think he does another thing, but he is a spy. They literally just remade the movie into a TV show. I don't know if Cameron was involved.
I don't want to see that.
I doubt it, but it is called True Lies, and I wanted to hunt it down and watch the pilot.
Horrible reviews.
Yeah.
Shocking.
No, yeah. I wanted to watch the pilot in preparation for this and just see if they still deal with like misogyny.
I'm sure from the look of the poster and the casting and the angle they're taking on this and the synopsis, like, yeah, it looks a lot more updated socially.
Right.
But the problem with True Lies is that if you update it a lot more socially, right, and you sort of make it easy viewing, it's not as interesting. Like I said, the stuff with Bill Paxton, if you're gonna make Arnold Schwarzenegger do all this stuff, which he should do it, like the movie is interesting because he has all these deficiencies. You've got to let that play for comedy, which is thorny and difficult, right? But I would rather something be thorny and difficult than just sort of bland and milquetoast on the way it views things, and just be like sort of like have a lot of like malice under the hood. On top of that, why would you make True Lies a TV show? Oh my God. Like
it's
what this fucking movie has going for it is the scale of it. Like without the scale, it's nothing.
Well, that's it. And it also to blend into sort of the reboot of the TV show there. But like for like the longest time too, Cameron, Arnie, and Jamie Lee were planning a sequel.
Yeah, and I would be interested to see what that looked like. I'm sure
for the
it would look
longest
something
time.
like Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Well, yeah, I'm sure it would have gone down that path. They were going to make it, and then I was watching some stuff with Cameron yesterday, and someone was asking him, they're like, "Oh, what happened? Is the what was the go with True Lies 2?" And he was like, "Oh, well, 9/11 happened, and terrorists stopped being funny." So, like,
were terrorists ever funny?
Well, this is it.
Was any of that ever funny? And it's like,
this is what I mean when he's quite a boneheaded gentleman.
He is a bonehead, and it's like, God, that does make me think though of probably the greatest 9/11 story ever, which is that Cameron and Bill Paxton were down in Cameron's submarine when it happened. They come back up, and it's like, what happened? The worst terrorist attack in history, Jim. It's fucking like that's my buddy's comment on my review. He just says the worst terrorist attack in history, Jim. It's like the absurdity of that scenario is insane. And it's very funny that that's what put the kibosh on True Lies 2, because like. Man, come on.
I know. Well, this is even I would have, because I've spoken so lovingly about this movie during the discussion. I put my hand up, completely guilty. Would have loved a True Lies 2 because this movie has
I have to imagine if you make it post 9/11, it has to be so much more insane.
Well, you can't do terrorists again.
You can't do terrorists again.
You'd have to do something else.
If you do, you're basically doing that Uwe Boll movie, Postal. I feel like that's what True Lies 2 becomes if you make it post 9/11 about terrorists.
Right. You'd have to do like tech villain. I don't know. It would have. I assume it would have happened in like maybe 2003 around then. So you would have had to tap into like technology. Yeah, exactly like that. I don't know.
That was the villain that was in vogue at the time. I mean, God, what's the villain in Mission Impossible 2? What does he want? I know.
He had something to do with. He was like a pharmaceutical.
Whatever, a lot of horse shit.
Yeah,
that movie's also all spectacle.
I mean, I'm just trying to think of there was
John
that.
Woo.
I can't think of at the time what it's called, but there was the Bond movie with Pierce Brosnan around that time. I'm guessing, assuming when True Lies 2 would have came out, and he was very like sort of tech villain sort of.
There's a lot
of
tech villain stuff in the Pierce Brosnan canon.
Yeah,
GoldenEye has a lot of hacker stuff in it. I mean, by the time you get to Mission Impossible 3, the villains are just so vague. Like Mission Impossible 3, it's like, yeah, Philip Seymour Hoffman's an arms dealer. And you're like, okay,
all
sure,
right, whatever.
It's Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Sure.
I love him.
All right, I'll go along with it. I think what I'm trying to say in the end is that James Cameron, if you're listening, get Chance and I to write the script for True Lies 2.
Oh God,
because we will make it good. We will make it. We'll do it. I'll do it for free. Chance might ask for.
No, I'll do it for free, and I promise I won't skimp out on the action details. You know I love a good explosion. I'll just make it. I'll give it a better shape this time.
Yeah,
and I'll also make it, if not less evil, at least evil in an interesting way.
Spot on. No, good stuff. That's probably going to do it with us on True Lies. Chance, is there any sort of we've missed out. I can't believe we haven't even touched on any sort of Arnie quips in this movie, which feel very sort of sarcastic throughout the whole way through. Because at that point they were so aware, cool off as he puts his head in the urinal, or smacks the two dogs' heads together and goes, "Stay." Obviously, the bridge is out is just one of my all-time favorite line readings.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've already said the best one-liner, which is Dana.
They got Dana.
Look at Dana!
Dana, grab on!
That's amazing. When he smashes the two dogs together, I forgot about that. God, that's such a good bit.
He even stops running and points at the dogs and goes, "Stay,
stay,
stay." Cool off. That whole sequence of him hanging off the helicopter trying to save his wife. The bridge is out is like, I like every time I watch that, I stand up and just start clapping because I'm like, God bless you, Arnie.
His accent, man. It really elevates what could be an otherwise boring character.
Oh, 100%.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he's that fucking beefy, and he's just saying Dana.
See, that's what you say, like, boring, because I'm trying to think ahead of what that TV show would be like, because like a lot of the reason
Arnie, like,
well, that's it. A lot of the reason I gravitate towards this is because Arnie is just so unbelievable in this movie.
No, he's such a compelling screen presence. He always has been, and so it's like, what are you doing, man? If you're on a TV budget, the year is 2024, and your lead is not Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh man.
Out the window, man.
Yeah, unbelievable. In the trash immediately. I mean, like, even the concept alone. We got to wrap up. I can't stop talking about True Lies. But even the concept alone of let's put Arnie as the James Bond role is just such an insane idea.
That's so funny. It's so funny trying to watch him like suave and shit.
Oh, the perfect thing about James Bond is that like he just looks like a regular guy. That's
He's
why
a guy. He's a sexy guy.
he's a
right?
sexy
like,
guy
Pierce
that just
Brosnan's like the
blends in.
sexiest guy, and he's smart, and he's like suave and everything.
But you
Vince
get this
Vaughn is, like,
hulking monster in a tuxedo.
yeah,
and
and
you're
he's
like, okay, well, that guy's a spy.
Century BC person, right?
I sell computers.
Oh my fucking god.
That's always been the because that to me has always been like sort of so winking at the camera, where that to me Cameron felt like, okay, you look at this guy, what's the least probable job this guy has? Yeah, he's a computer salesman.
Computer salesman, and he's just that fucking built.
I sell computers.
Yeah, he had the gift of prophecy. He knew that Mark Zuckerberg was going to get all beefed up.
Yeah, that's it. No, good stuff. So that's gonna do it with us on True Lies. I want to thank Chance. Oh my god, this has been an absolute blast. I'm so sorry we haven't done this sooner. This has been a great time. I'm gonna have to get you on again very soon. But this is
You need to. Let's pick something crazier next time. I feel like you can top True Lies.
Oh well, I think I'm gonna have to pass the reins on to you, and you can choose the.
Oh man, I'm gonna fuck you up, dude. You're gonna regret that.
I'm gonna like,
I'm already my pick. We're watching the clones of Bruce Lee.
Okay, all right, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do something that's going to be an incredibly like sort of pain in the ass to try and track down and watch. Something that I'll have to like travel to a third world country to get a copy
Clones of Bruce Lee's on YouTube, dude.
All right, done. Let's do it. But this is the point in the episode, Chance, I normally give my guests anything they want to plug. So the stage is yours, brother. So anything in the works at the moment?
Yeah, go to my Instagram account, chance.rev. I'm casting a movie. God knows if you're available to be in it, but I'll cast anybody. I'm not picky. And follow me on Letterboxd, same at chance.rev. You can watch me watch an entire film with the social and formal weight of Andre Arnold's fish tank. And then I will just type out one word, dubious, and hit post. And I think that's good content. So
he's worth a follow. He's definitely one of my favorite people on Letterboxd by far. It's great. Yeah. Great. Absolute good stuff. No, but that is going to do it from... Oh, no. Sorry. Shit. I can't believe...
Oh, we have a bit to do.
Oh, my God.
I have my answer really, really quick.
All right.
I can rattle this shit off.
Before you say it. So this is normally... So obviously, why does... Mr. Chance, why does the Muppet movie and True Lies pair well together?
Oh, this is a great note to end on. I'm glad we saved this right into the last second because I got to go Thomas Paine on this one. It's the rights of man.
Yes.
if the Muppets are and aren't people, why does True Lies treat Middle Eastern people as if they are also subhuman? So we're asking the serious questions. Do they deserve rights? Is what they're doing politically viable? I don't know. James Cameron surely doesn't think so, but I think the reality that he's basing it on begs to differ.
Perfect stuff. Perfect end to note on. You've heard it here from us. I'll see you all in the next one.